All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're not just talking about a health condition. We're launching a full-blown global public health investigation. Our target? Hypertension. And we're going to be looking at the evidence coming in from investigators all over the world.
And that's really the core question here, isn't it? Hypertension gets called the silent killer for a reason. Most of the time, there are no obvious symptoms. That makes it a really tricky adversary. You can't fight it head-on. You have to fight it with data, with surveillance, and with a deep understanding of the clues it leaves behind.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to profile our target, the silent killer itself. Then, we'll open up the investigator's toolkit and see how we actually track this thing. From there, we'll look at dispatches from the field, connect the dots to other health issues, and finally, figure out a global strategy to get this problem under control.
Okay, let's get into it. Before you can track a suspect, you have to know who you're dealing with. So what exactly are we up against? And why is it so widespread but, so often missed?
So here's the official definition. But a better way to think about it is like this. Imagine there's just too much pressure in the plumbing of your body all the time. Over years, that constant pressure starts to wear down the whole system. And that's what leads to big problems like heart attacks and strokes. It's that foundational risk that makes it so incredibly important for public health investigators to track.
Now, if you're going to run a global investigation, you can't have your agents in different countries all using different methods, right? That would be chaos. You need a standardized toolkit, so the evidence you gather in one place can be compared to the evidence from somewhere else. That's how you build a real global case.
And these are the essential tools. We're not talking about magnifying glasses, but these massive coordinated surveys. The DHS is kind of like a health census. It gives you that big picture view of a population. The SPA goes and inspects the clinics and hospitals to see what tools they have. And SAGE, well, that one follows people over a long time to see how their health changes as they get older. These are the instruments that let us measure this invisible threat.
And this right here is why this is such a game changer. When investigators in Kenya, in Kazakhstan, and Guatemala are all using the same playbook, their data speaks the same language. For the first time, we can really connect the dots on a global map, spot the trends, and find the hotspots. It's this consistency that gives us credible intelligence to work with.
Okay, so we've got our tools. We know the method. Now it's time to check the dispatches coming in from our agents in the field. This is where we get that raw, on-the-ground look at what's really going on with hypertension.
Our first dispatch takes us to Namibia. Investigators there were looking at people in the formal workforce, office workers, people with steady jobs. So, what did they turn up?
The results were pretty startling. More than 1 in 4 of these employees had elevated blood pressure. This isn't some small at-risk group. This is a huge chunk of the professional workforce, people you might assume are in pretty good health.
But here's the real kicker from that Namibia report. The problem was common, but knowledge about it, not so much. The vast majority of these same employees couldn't even correctly identify the risk factors for high blood pressure. It's a perfect example of a silent killer hiding in plain sight.
Okay, next we're heading to a completely different environment, rural China. Here, the investigation was all about health literacy. What do people actually know about hypertension, especially the people who've already been diagnosed with it?
And what they found? Well, it's a massive gap. On a 100-point knowledge test, patients who were already living with hypertension scored an average of just 26. That's not just low awareness. That's a serious breakdown in helping patients understand their own health condition.
So the message from this dispatch is crystal clear. You simply cannot manage a disease you don't understand. Good, accessible health education has to be a cornerstone of any strategy, especially for people who might have less access to information.
Our final field report is coming from a region that has faced incredible challenges. South Kivu in the DRC, a post-conflict area. Here, the investigation was focused on the most basic first step, just screening people.
The number they came back with was just shocking. Just under 15% of the entire population had ever had their blood pressure checked. I mean, think about that. For the other 85%, hypertension isn't just silent, it's completely invisible.
So the challenge here is just fundamental. Without screening, there's no data. Investigators are flying blind. You can't design programs, you can't treat patients if you have no earthly idea who's even at risk. It's the very first barrier you have to break through.
A good investigator follows every single lead, and the evidence shows that hypertension rarely acts alone. It's often tangled up with other health issues, and one of its biggest co-conspirators is mental health.
Take a look at this. A huge study across 9 countries in the former Soviet Union found this really stark connection. People with hypertension were literally twice as likely to also be experiencing psychological distress compared to everybody else. The body and the mind, they're clearly connected.
In the researchers, they put it bluntly. This isn't just a coincidence. They say there is a significant association. And what that tells us is that just treating the numbers on a blood pressure cuff isn't going to cut it. Care has to be integrated. It has to address both physical and mental well-being.
So we have all this intelligence. What do we do with it? Well, the final phase of any investigation is to turn that evidence into action. How do we use these dispatches from Namibia and China and the DRC to build a strategy that actually works? When you put all the evidence together, a really clear 3-part strategy emerges. Step 1, we've got to boost health literacy. We have to tackle those dangerous knowledge gaps we saw in rural China. Step 2, we've got to expand screening. We have to close that massive screening gap we saw in the DRC. And step 3, we've got to integrate care and technology. Because as we saw, treating the body means treating the mind too.
So you see how it all connects, right? It's a chain of evidence. It starts with having consistent tools. That data gives us the field reports that show us exactly where the vulnerabilities are, like low awareness or poor screening. And those findings are what let us build a plan for targeted, effective public health action.
And this brings our whole investigation full circle. We started with this silent, invisible enemy. But by piecing together all these clues from all over the world, a clear picture of our adversary emerges. The evidence shows us its weaknesses. So the question is no longer, what's the problem? The real question now is, can we finally act on this intelligence to turn the tables and bring the silent killer under control?